Nooga Radio and NoogaRadio.com here on 92.7 FM. I'm Keon Rose. You're listening to Clutch with Keon Rose. Thank you for joining me today. Making me just a small part of your day. You know that I appreciate each and every one of you. I feel like I need a new opening intro spiel because this one's just starting to get boring. Like I remember I used to write that down. And at this point, it just flows out of me like some kind of open spigot. So I'm going to have to figure out what to do about that. I'm going to have to figure out how to change it up a little bit so that people, don't wind up falling into a routine. I got to keep y'all on your toes. Speaking of not falling into a routine, how about Sports Talk with Sam Jordan? Sam Jordan getting an interview with the Chattanooga Eagles and the Chattanooga Football Club. So the two footballs of Chattanooga, football and football, American football, and just what the rest of the world would call football and we would call soccer. And those were a couple of great interviews. Make sure you go on our Facebook page and our YouTube page and check those things out because they're very informative. And if you want to find out how to watch live local sports in Chattanooga, right? Because you can't watch high school sports all year long because obviously high school sports gets out for the summer, right? So you can watch Chattanooga FC and you can watch Chattanooga Eagles they play football in the summer, man. And when you think about how awesome that is, because it's right around that point in the summer where you start really wanting football to come back. And there's nothing there for you. Yeah, I went out. I watched the Chattanooga Eagles play about 3 times last year, a couple of regular season games and and one of the playoff games. And absolutely fun. Absolutely enjoyed it. And a lot of Chattanoogans were out there. So when we figure out where those games are going to be next season, we'll get that to you. We'll get that to you and take your kids. It's a fun time. It's an absolutely fun time to go out there. A lot of players who were big in high school in this area trying to make it to the next level. It's a development league. So yesterday I asked a question, which is Georgia, Alabama, who's the most dangerous squad going into the college football playoff? Because they're both on separate sides of the bracket, which is why I feel like this is a valid question to ask because they're going to be dangerous to one another, obviously, if they play in the title game, but they're also going to be dangerous to whatever opponent it is that they're playing. Alabama playing Clemson again, and Georgia playing Oklahoma for the first time. And so who is it going to be? Who's going to be the more dangerous team there? And I thought it was going to be Georgia. I gave Georgia the slight edge. I gave Alabama the edge in coaching with Saban. I gave Georgia the edge when it came to backfield because, look, Nick Chubb and Sony Michel are so lethal. Each of them, 13 touchdowns on the season each. Okay, there's 2 men accounting for 26 touchdowns. And when you add Jake Fromm accounting for an extra 21 touchdowns in the air, it's hard to look at that squad and go, yeah, that backfield isn't deadly, right? You look at Alabama. Alabama's been good. Alabama's been great even. Jalen Hurts, Damian Harris, Bo Scarborough, that's nothing to shake a stick at. But I will say this. I just don't find that group of guys to be as dangerous. I'm not as terrified of them. Part of it with Scarborough is the injuries, that sometimes, he'll get injured in a game and he's gone for the game. And we saw this in the national title game last year. He's a beast of a running back if he can stay healthy. When he's on the field, look, that changed the dynamics of last year's national title game when Scarborough found himself out of the game early in the second quarter, I believe. Yeah, changed the dynamics of that game, and it gave Clemson the upper hand. I'm going to give Georgia the edge because of that in the backfield. I'm going to give wide receivers, I'm going to give Georgia the edge again. I just think in terms of the dynamic playmaking ability down the field, I think Jake Fromm gives Georgia that in a way that Jalen Hurts does not necessarily do with Alabama, which stinks because if you had to tell me who's got the best receiver on either team, I would say it's Calvin Ridley and Alabama's got him. Like that would be it. But Jalen Hurts doesn't take advantage of those guys in the same way. That's not his strength. It's just not his strength. This is a football team. Their bread and butter is running the football and grinding out victories. I mean, that's mostly what they do well. And then defensively, I gave the edge to Alabama. It's a slight edge, but I gave the edge to Alabama because I just think they're injured right now. I think they ought to be healthier by the time the playoffs starts. And I think that they're just the more experienced group of guys. And so, yeah, I'm going to give that edge to Alabama, but I think ultimately, I favor Georgia as the deadlier team going into the college football playoff, which is not to say that Alabama is not going to do great. There's no guarantee that Clemson's going to be able to beat them. But I will say this, though, because I think that Clemson and Oklahoma both have two very, very lethal quarterbacks, right? Kelly Bryant has been having a very good year for Clemson. And Baker Mayfield is probably going to win the Heisman Trophy for Oklahoma. And if that's going to be the case, then you have to go, well, which team in the college football playoff? And you can weigh in on this, 423-800-8949, 423-800-8949. Knuckleheads, go ahead and call that number. Which team has the best quarterback? Because I think that this is a very loaded quarterback situation in the college football playoff. Obviously, I think that Jake Fromm is going to be the weakest of the bunch. He's a freshman, and he has shown signs of being rattled, and Georgia has not asked him to do a ton. Now, the last three or four games after they lost to Auburn and just got clocked, they've been asking Jake Fromm to do more because I think Kirby's smart, and I think this coaching staff realized very easily, we cannot go out there and have Jake Fromm unprepared to throw the ball. He's got to be able to push the ball downfield if our running game gets taken away. And look, this is the playoff. And with all postseasons, that's what everybody does. They take away your best punch. So what can you do next? Right? And Georgia needed Jake Fromm to develop in that way and develop very quickly into a guy that could push the ball downfield. And he did. And that's how they were able to beat Auburn, because I thought that if Auburn got an early lead, I didn't see how Georgia was going to be able to come back into that game. And Auburn got a lead, and Jake Fromm was able to get the lead back. He was able to get the lead back, and he did so accurately, with great timing, with great accuracy. And so I like him, and I like what he's been able to do, but he is the weakest of the bunch here. He's the guy with the least playing experience. He's the guy who is still the freshman, most capable of making the knuckleheaded mistake. And so I can't say that Jake Fromm is the most dangerous quarterback in the playoff. I also think that so Jake Fromm is fourth. Ranking at third, I would have to say that is Jalen Hurts. I would say that Jalen Hurts is the third best quarterback in the playoff. And I only do this to him because he is not the guy that pushes the ball downfield with his arm. The further you ask him to throw, the more sketchy that accuracy becomes. And because Alabama is so good at running the football, when Jalen Hurts is asked to push the ball downfield, his receivers are usually open or in one-on-one matchups, in which case you throw the ball up to Calvin Ridley, and Ridley's going to come down with it most of the time. So I'm okay with that. But I also can't give Jalen Hurts the benefit of the doubt if he's not going to be that great of a thrower of the football, especially when you consider the mobility of all of these guys, right? Like Fromm is not fast, but he can scoot. Jalen Hurts is mobile, but so is Kelly Bryant, and so is Baker Mayfield, right? Like these guys are all mobile. You get to a point in the college football playoff where you realize there's a specific kind of team that is capable of making it to the playoff, right? Teams that are defensively sound, teams with dynamic playmakers, either at running back or wide receiver, and teams with quarterbacks who can throw a little bit and run a little bit. The pure pocket passer in college football tends not to thrive on the same level as the guy who can both run and is accurate, right? And so I would say that my second quarterback in the college football playoff, the guy that I think is the second most lethal, is Kelly Bryant. And then this is a problem, I think, for Alabama. Kelly Bryant is exactly the kind of quarterback that gives the Alabama Crimson Tide nightmares. I refuse to go on the record and say that Kelly Bryant is somehow better than Deshaun Watson. But I will say this. He is in that same mold of quarterback that gives Alabama fits. And I've been watching this for years. Because to me, it's a trend that has stood out to me that I find deeply fascinating, which is if there is a guy who is an accurate passer and he's mobile, Alabama, as great as their defense is, has trouble slowing that guy down. They just do. I'm not sure why. Deshaun Watson gave them fits. Austin Allen at Arkansas gave them fits. Right? Chad Kelly, when he was at Ole Miss, gave them fits. Nick Fitzgerald this year gave them fits. There are plenty of guys, plenty of examples that I have. If you're mobile enough and you are accurate at passing the football, you give Alabama problems. Even Trevor Knight, not necessarily at A&M, but he actually didn't play bad in that game. But when he was at Oklahoma, Trevor Knight gave Alabama fits because he's vaguely mobile and he's got a strong arm and he's fairly accurate. Like there's a mold of guy that you can use to beat Alabama. Kelly Bryant is the mold. He is the mold. That's the guy that gives the Tide fits, even when they're healthy, and they're currently not as healthy as they could be. So I do think that Alabama probably wins that game. I do ultimately think Alabama beats Clemson. But by no means do I think it's an easy victory, and by no means do I think that this is one of those games that's going to be lopsided in favor of Alabama. I think that Kelly Bryant is capable of causing Alabama problems in a number of ways that specifically they have been historically bad at dealing with. And when I say historically, I mean in recent history. They've been bad at dealing with these problems. Right? Kelly Bryant. Also, Kelly Bryant is a clutch performer. He's a guy that in the fourth quarter, he shows up. He makes big plays when he needs to make big plays. And the only reason why I can't give Kelly Bryant the number one spot is because Baker Mayfield is going to win the Heisman. And the reason why Baker Mayfield is going to win the Heisman is he's incredibly accurate. His production is through the roof. Baker Mayfield has thrown 41 touchdown passes this year, which is like double everybody else in the playoff. And he's his pro comparison, not as pro comparison, college comparison. People compare Baker Mayfield to Johnny Manziel, which I just find to be horribly insulting to Baker Mayfield. Baker Mayfield is 10 times the passer that Johnny Manziel was. But he's every bit the playmaker, right? Like you can't argue that with Johnny football. That Johnny Manziel at A&M plays break down and the play's not over so long as that guy has the ball. I feel the same way when I watch Baker Mayfield. And he's special, man. You know, I see a lot of the NFL scouts dismissing him because he's not very tall. And I just go, well, sure, but we have a decent amount of guys in the NFL that are not very tall, that are some of the better quarterbacks in the NFL. Like Russell Wilson's not very tall, and Drew Brees is not very tall. And heck, even Tyrod Taylor's not very tall, and Tyrod Taylor isn't great, right? Like Tyrod Taylor's not in the same league with Drew Brees. He's not in the same league with Russell Wilson either. But Tyrod Taylor he's better than Blake Bortles, who's tall, and he's better than Josh McCown, and he's tall, and he's better than Sean Kaiser, and he's tall. Listen, being tall is not the be-all and end-all of making it in the league. I look at Baker Mayfield, and I hate to admit it, right? Because I hate Oklahoma. I grew up rooting for the Longhorns. I started watching college football back in 2005 because I hopped on the bandwagon. But I lived in Texas, right? I hopped on the bandwagon of everyone around me. And everyone was like, look, Vince Young is taking us to the finals. Are you in this thing? Or are you out? And I was in. And it's the most fun I ever had being a college football fan. And also, that's one of the only titles a team that I've ever rooted for has ever won. So I'm going to have to go ahead and accept that. I rooted for the Longhorns ever since then. Since I was 15 years old. I am now 27. Okay, I've been rooting for them for a very long time. And I have never liked the Sooners. You understand? Yes, the old saying in Texas goes, right now, is it 7:26 on a Tuesday night? And Oklahoma still sucks. I hate them. But Baker Mayfield is special. And I don't think that that can be overstated. I mean, and so can Georgia beat Oklahoma? They sure can. But they're going to need to score lots of points, which isn't a problem, which is not a problem because I don't think that Oklahoma is quite as adept as most teams that Georgia would play of taking away the run. And if Georgia runs the way that they want to run the football, if Georgia runs the way they want to run, which is to say they run the ball most of the game and Jake Fromm throws the ball like 11 times, 10 times, 9 times, if Georgia gets that level of production where they feel comfortable not even throwing the ball, Georgia wins. Right? And it's not close. And I don't think that Oklahoma's got the kind of defense where you're absolutely sure that Georgia can't just go in there and run the way they want to run. Like I'm not 100% certain of that. I'm going to have to go with Georgia here, but not because they've got the better quarterback. I think Baker Mayfield is the best quarterback in the college football playoff. I do. I 100% believe that. And I also believe that guy's going to go to the NFL. And if he finds himself in the hands of the right coach, the right offensive team, and they develop him properly, that guy's going to be a monster at the next level also. I believe it. I just don't think that Oklahoma is the second best team in this playoff. And honestly, the best team it's between Alabama and Georgia. I think somehow the committee got all of this stuff flipped around because we ended up with Clemson in the number 1 spot because I think the committee chickened out and didn't want to drop Clemson any. So they ended up making Clemson number 1. But you and I both know the truth on this one. We all know what the gig is. Clemson's not the best team in this nation, right? Like they deserve to be in the playoff. I'm not disrespecting them in any way. The way they worked over Miami, look, they completely deserve to be there. I'm just saying, they're not the best team in the nation. You could make the strong argument that all of the other 3 teams in the playoff are better teams than Clemson. Clemson's good, though. Clemson's good. This is the point of the year where that just happens, though. You just sound like you're disrespecting everybody, and I'm not disrespecting anybody. All of these teams are in the playoff for a reason. I think the committee got it right. Again, I think the committee's been really good since the inception of this thing. We're now like 3 years into this, and I think that they've done a fantastic job every single time. It's tough. That is a tough thing to do. It is a tough thing to sit down and try and decipher using stats and the eye test who deserves to be, of all the teams in college football, who deserves to be in the top 4. And I think that that's the reason why this thing ultimately gets expanded. Now, I don't think that it helps. I don't think it helps to expand it. I think if you expand it, now you've got to figure out who deserves to be in amongst even more bubble teams. But when you have a college football playoff that might result in an all SEC national title game, which is America's nightmare, right? It is their college football nightmare. I know it is. When you have 2 teams from one conference that could be representing or could be in the national title, that is a problem, I think, for college football in terms of how much money they could possibly make. Right? You want that ACC representative in there. You want that Pac-12 representative in there. You want that Big Ten representative in there. Right? And the only conferences represented, or ACC, Big 12, SEC. You got no Big Ten. You got no Pac-12. Those are big money-making conferences where college football is largely important. Right? The Pac-12 could probably survive without this because the Pac-12 also likes basketball a ton. But the Big Ten does football. That's what they do. And I don't know that this is going to work for them. And I can tell you that this is going to be one of those reasons where you're going to end up getting a push for the expansion of the college football playoff. And I think it could work, by the way, because you don't have to add more games, by the way. You just annex some more bowl games, which are largely worthless anyway. And we're going to talk about that a little bit later in the show. Because remember last year we did the bowl game. Is this or not? Is this a bowl game or not? Where I made up some bowl games, and then I read through some of the actual bowl games, and we got to guess, was this actually a bowl game, or did I just make it up? So just annex some bowl games, and there you go. Clutch with Keon Rose on 92.7 FM, Nooga Radio, noogaradio.com.
The Tennessee Valley's news talk leader, Nooga Radio, digital FM 95.3 HD4 and 92.7 FM. 3, 2, 1. Chattanooga Radio, digital FM 95.3 HD4, 92.7 FM's news now.
In Trenton, Georgia, according to WRCB, after a traffic stop for a seatbelt violation at a Circle K, sheriff's deputies in Dade County discovered pipe bombs inside that vehicle. The GBI was called in, and 10 more pipe bombs were discovered in the home of the couple, according to the GBI. There may be felony charges pressed against the couple for each of the pipe bombs discovered, 13 total. Another armed robbery in Chattanooga, this time outside a Regions Bank in a parking lot. It happened Monday at about 9:30 in the morning. The victim told police that the gunman displayed a firearm and demanded her possessions. She says a purse and a cell phone were stolen. The gunman then ran away. Police are investigating with the robbery division. The fire department says a woman's duplex was set ablaze when she fell asleep, leaving hot oil on the oven. She suffered smoke inhalation and was taken to the hospital. Russell Stroud, Nooga Radio News Talk 92.7. Now.
Expect increasing clouds and milder weather out there through your nighttime. Could see a late shower or two, lows into the lower 50s. Now for your Tuesday, becoming breezy with showers and thunder showers marching in from the west. Highs 60 to 62. Breezy, much cooler for the midweek. Highs closer to 50. Experience the magic of the holidays with Rock City's Enchanted Garden of Lights. Create your one-of-a-kind adventure with dazzling views and almost a million colorful lights. Visit CRockCity.com for all of the magical details. And I'm Storm 12 Chief Meteorologist Patrick Cole.
Traffic, news, and information. Nooga Radio, digital FM 95.3 HD4 and 92.7 FM.
Cash, and more cash. Hey, where do you think Santa shops? Rick Davis Gold and Diamonds. He made a special stop to tell Rick, slash those prices. Ooh, ho, ho. That's right now for Christmas at Rick Davis Gold and Diamonds. Even Rick's not going to say no to Santa. No. Don't wait till after Christmas. It'll be way too late. Get your cash right now for your gold, your silver, your diamonds, and jewelry. Has Rick gone mad?
Well, maybe a little.
No, we think he's just Christmassy. Rick Davis Gold and Diamonds, Brainerd Road, Chattanooga. You know where it is. Hey, is that Santa? Ooh, ho, ho. Even Rick's not going to say no to Santa. No. Get your cash right now.
An automated nuclear missile defense system has suddenly entered into launch mode, and you are the only one who can stop it. Escape Experience Chattanooga. Your team has just been infected with a deadly virus. Your only hope? There, in an abandoned farmhouse. Escape Experience Chattanooga. Handcuffed in a maximum security prison, you have an hour to flee. Escape Experience Chattanooga. These escape scenarios and more at Chattanooga's best escape room, game, and team building platform. Call now. Slots are limited. Register online at escapeexperience.com/Chattanooga. Escape Experience Chattanooga.
The Tennessee Valley's news talk leader, Nooga Radio, digital FM 95.3 HD4 and 92.7 FM.
So one of the Tennessee coaching candidates, Chad Morris of SMU. I don't know why I pronounced his name like that. I just went full Northerner on everybody. Chad Morris from SMU. One of the top candidates for Tennessee's coaching job is actually headed per report. Okay. It's not been fully substantiated as yet. But, I trust the SEC country. I do. They have not led me wrong very often. I'm hard pressed to think of a time where I cited an SEC country report. I was wrong. I can't think of it off the top of my head if it happened. So anyway, Chad Morris on his way possibly to Arkansas, to our very own Sam Jordan's Razorbacks, which if they were to hire him, if that were to happen, Chad Morris would be a good hire, I think. Right? First off, he got SMU to the Frisco Bowl last year, 7-5. Right? He had been building that team up, 2-10, 5-7, 7-5. Chad Morris, solid coach there, and doing a job at SMU. That's a tough place to coach now, right? Like, gone are the Southwestern Conference days where SMU and the Pony Express. You remember that at all? I don't. I had to watch the documentary on ESPN. But the point is, long gone are those days. And winning at SMU is an uphill battle. And Chad Morris has been able to actually do it, which is the thing that's crazy, which is why Tennessee's got their eye on him, which is why Arkansas had their eye on him. And so, yeah, Arkansas may have been able to snag a great coaching candidate. And by the way, Chad Morris, very young. Chad Morris, 49 years old, which means if that pans out, you've got a guy that you could have as your coach for like 10, 15 years. If that works correctly. Right? This is a big step for Chad Morris, by the way, because this is his second head coaching job as a college coach. Right? Coached for a number of years in high school. He was the offensive coordinator and quarterbacks coach at Clemson for 3 years. And now at SMU, turning that around and getting an opportunity here to enter the SEC, to enter the realm where the big boys play. And so good luck to Arkansas, Chad Morris, SMU. I guess SMU has to find somebody now. So I'm looking at all this and I'm going, wow, the coaching carousel in college football is 10 times as aggressive as what the NFL's got going on. It's 10 times as aggressive. So you've got that. You also have the fact that Auburn is going to be playing in the Peach Bowl. University of Central Florida also playing them in the Peach Bowl. Also in the Peach Bowl. And University of Central Florida, the amount of tickets that they're allowed to have, they sold out all of their tickets in less than 24 hours. Because people in Central Florida can't believe it. Right? Like, we actually think that they're good enough to play Auburn in a Peach Bowl. And I'm just saying, I'm glad that we live on this side of I-75. Because if you live on that side of I-75, the part of I-75 that is south of Atlanta heading north, that's about to be a nightmare. Right? For that game? I don't know if you have business down there in Atlanta, but boy, just go ahead and avoid that day. Like, unless you're an Auburn fan going down to watch the game, you really ought not to be trying to go. That lower part of I-75 is about to be a mess. And I'm not entirely certain what we do about that. All right. And last night, this concludes my news roundup, I suppose. But last night, the Steelers and the Bengals in the NFL played in a game in which the Steelers were able to escape 23-20 after giving up a 17-3 lead against the Cincinnati Bengals, who are terrible, absolutely bad. And I'm going to talk to you about this game because I watched the highlights today. I did not watch the game last night. I didn't. I looked at it and I was like, do I really want to do this to myself? No, I did not. I don't even remember what else I did. I did not watch that game though. On purpose. It's the Bengals. Do you know how hard it is to sit down and watch the Bengals on actually purpose? There's no way I'm going to do that to myself. I don't make enough money to sit down and watch the Bengals. Now, if the Bengals wanted to pay me or get me tickets to the game, I could do it. But the thing that concerned me about that game is the amount of injuries in that game. And a lot of those injuries were head trauma related because I felt like the refs kind of lost control of the game at a certain point. Right? The big notable hit was Juju Smith-Schuster laid the wood on Vontaze Burfict. Now, I thought the hit was legal because he led with the shoulder. He didn't lead with the helmet. But Vontaze Burfict has led with his helmet pretty much his whole career. And you could make a strong argument that Vontaze Burfict might be the dirtiest player in the whole league. Because I can't think of anybody else dirtier active at the moment in the NFL. Like, I'm actually floored that Vontaze Burfict is in the league. Like, as much as the NFL loves to come down on guys for their off-the-field discretions, whether or not they even have proof, the NFL doesn't necessarily come down as hard on guys for on-the-field stuff, right? Like, Juju Smith-Schuster got suspended a game for the hit because you could make the argument that Vontaze Burfict was a defenseless receiver. I have trouble feeling bad for Vontaze Burfict in this case when you consider how many people Vontaze Burfict has laid out, how many people's lives he has put in danger by leading with the crown of his helmet. The amount of plays that I've seen where a guy is basically tackled and then Vontaze Burfict comes flying in anyway with nothing but ill intent on his mind. Yeah, I don't feel bad for Vontaze Burfict in this situation whatsoever. I wouldn't have suspended Juju Smith-Schuster at all. They fined and suspended him. He suspended one game. I would have suspended him. When you consider who it was that was on the other end of that. Now, I understand you're the NFL. You've got to enforce it all the way across the board. But I'm saying, if you're enforcing it all the way across the board, how much is too much that Vontaze Burfict is still in the league playing football? Because the Bengals are never going to let him go, right? Like, the Bengals are the one team where they're just like, oh, yeah, you come across as a legitimately bad person? Yeah, you can play for us. Now, we're cool with you being an awful individual. Yeah, no, come right here. Join us, my guy. Like, no, you can't have this. You can't have this. And that's what that hit brought up for me is, on the one hand, like, I wanted to be like, yeah, Juju Smith-Schuster intended to do that to Vontaze Burfict because he's Vontaze Burfict. So on the one hand, you have to suspend him. But on the other hand, Vontaze Burfict has a highlight reel, or should I call it a low light reel of dirty plays. You can find him on YouTube. That's about 15 minutes long. There's 15 minutes of random YouTube footage of Vontaze Burfict being the dirtiest active player in the league. Right? And there could be even more. Right? It's compiled by just some guy on YouTube. Who knows what he missed? You got to be friggin' kidding me. You got to be kidding me that guy's still in the league. Like, there's got to be something you can do to find yourself not playing football anymore. It's like, nah, if you wind up on the right team, you pretty much never have to answer for being a terrible person. And that's problematic. At least in my opinion. It seems to be a problem. I can't necessarily abide by it. So the Houston Texans hold serve, or not the Houston Texans, the Tennessee Titans rather hold serve against the Houston Texans. They remain tied at the top of this division, at the top of the AFC South, because the Jaguars beat Indy 30-10. Tennessee beat Houston 24-13. And the Titans are going to make the playoffs. My question with the Titans is this. Do they do anything when they get there? I'm legitimately concerned. I am legitimately concerned because they still have not impressed me. They win. And, you you've got the Titans fans out there going, hey, man, a win's a win's a win. I don't believe a win is a win. Or let me rephrase that. I don't believe a win is just a win. Yes, it's a win. It goes on your record as a win. Sure. But a win is also indicative of what you're capable of. And I don't know what the Tennessee Titans are capable of. Because against opponents they ought to smoke out of existence, they struggle all the time. And they struggled against Houston. Right? Pulled it together at the end there. But they struggled against Houston. They struggled against Tom Savage. Right? But that's a problem. And Savage hasn't been terrible since he's come back. But that to me can't be the case. That can't be the case. Where you're a team that people thought you were going to win your division and it wouldn't be close. Now, in fairness to you, Jacksonville popped up out of nowhere. I don't think anybody saw the Jaguars storyline happening. But the Titans still, to me, are the most well-rounded, complete team in that division. And when I watch them, they struggle against everybody. And to the point where I look at them and I go, yeah, this is a team that could very well find themselves in the postseason, in the playoffs. But once they got there, what could they actually accomplish? I don't know. And I don't trust them to actually accomplish anything. Right? I feel the same way, by the way, about Atlanta. Atlanta makes me sick to watch them play football. They lost to the Vikings 14-9. Now, I'm going to give the devil his due here because the Vikings are really good as a defensive unit. The way that Jacksonville has been surprising, Minnesota is surprising in that same way, which is you're surprised by what it is that they are doing, especially when you look at their quarterback and you go, really? You're surprised by it. But then on further analysis, it's really not that surprising. Like when you look at Jacksonville, you go, how is this team this good? And you're surprised by it. But then upon further review, you look a little bit closer and you go, oh, no, Jacksonville's defense is a top 5 defense. Their offensive line is a top 5 offensive line. And their running backs are top of the league running backs. So, yeah, Blake Bortles is going to play you out of a game every once in a while. But mostly, that's a tough team to beat, right? I feel the same way about Minnesota. You look at Minnesota. They've got great receivers. They've got a top 5 defense. They've got Mike Zimmer, who's arguably a top 3 defensive coach in the league. They've got Case Keenum. And Case Keenum is interesting because he's not garbage. He's played pretty well. Right? I mean, he hasn't exceeded every expectation, but at the same time, Case Keenum's had some big-time games. He's made some big-time throws. That guy is a passable starter in the NFL. And when you talk about how low we thought the bar for starting NFL quarterback was at the beginning of this season, passable NFL starter is real good, especially for a team that lost their passable NFL starter to a horrific injury. And Case Keenum was the guy that was supposed to hold the job until Teddy Bridgewater got back. Case Keenum might keep the job. That's how good he's been playing. He might keep it. And when you combine that with the defense, the wide receiving core, the discovery of Adam Thielen at wide receiver, that guy is great, right? We may have misread him at the beginning, but you can't misread him now. Adam Thielen is a top receiver in the NFL as a rookie and a guy that was largely passed up on, which to me, when I watch Adam Thielen play, I legitimately don't know how it is that happened. Except to say, oh, he's a white wide receiver. I feel like Bill Belichick missed that one. Because Adam Thielen is got great hands, fantastic route running, and the dude is fast and not deceptively fast. Fast. Adam Thielen is really fast, and he's enormous. Want your prototypical wide receiver. He's everything you want. How on earth did anyone miss Adam Thielen? But you combine all of those things together, and when you watch Minnesota play football, it's not surprising that they're good. What is surprising is that they stopped Atlanta from scoring a touchdown at all. Atlanta didn't score a touchdown in that game, right? Kicked 3 field goals. And that can't happen for a team that wants a playoff spot. Right? In an NFC that is difficult and hotly contested. That can't happen. And I ask the same question of the Falcons that I asked of the Titans, which is the Titans are more than likely going to find themselves in the playoffs, in my opinion. But will they even be effective once they get there? Because they look like they're barely struggling to win a lot of these games. And I don't know. And I do blame Mike Mularkey and his horrible play calling for most of that. Because I feel like he gets too conservative. And you've got a dynamic playmaker in Marcus Mariota. Right? You've got a dynamic running game with guys who, despite the fact that they are traditional between the tackles type runners, are capable of catching the football and making dangerous plays in space. And if you have guys who can do that, use them like that. Right? Like there's nothing that says that you can't go ahead and give DeMarco Murray and Derrick Henry more all-purpose yards. Except Mularkey won't do it. And I have the same question for Atlanta. Like, Atlanta's going to struggle really hard to make the playoffs. And if they were to make it, because they're not guaranteed anything, the NFC is way too loaded for that. If they make it, well, what can they do? A team this up and down. I don't know if I can trust him. Again, the NFL playoffs have been the kind of testing ground where if you get hot at the right time, you can make a run. I just don't trust them to do it. I don't. Like, not when you look at all the other teams that could possibly potentially find their way in. Right? Like, not when you look at what Minnesota's been able to do. Not when you look at the fact that Dallas has been hovering around. Not when you look at what the Rams are doing. Not when you look at what the Panthers and Saints are doing in your very own division. Right? Like not even, you can't even discount the Packers. Right? Like Brian Hundley has been doing amazing things. Amazing things. It's crazy. He's not like, he doesn't look like a world beater, Hundley, but if you saw Hundley being able to make the kind of plays, and he's a rookie that looks lost throwing the football a lot. They make the kind of plays on Sunday that he was able to make. I would never have guessed that. I would never have guessed that. Watch with Keon Rose on Nooga Radio, NoogaRadio.com, 92.7 FM. If you have the answer to the question that I asked earlier, who do you think is the most dangerous quarterback in the college football playoff? I think it's Baker Mayfield. I still don't think Oklahoma beats Georgia, but I do think that Georgia has an uphill battle on their hands because I think that Baker Mayfield is that great. Now, I don't believe that Oklahoma has the kind of defense to stop Georgia from running the football how Georgia wants to run the football. But Baker Mayfield is the best quarterback in the college football playoff. I think that Kelly Bryant is the second best quarterback in the college football playoff. I think that Jalen Hurts is number 3. And I think that at number 4 is Jake Fromm. He's a freshman. There are lots of moments where he looks like a freshman and plays like a freshman. Yes, he is the most accurate passer in the SEC. And yes, he does make plays when he needs to make plays. But if you're going to put anybody up against a freshman, I'm not going to take the freshman. Not unless I see a guy that's truly, truly transcendent and special. And Jake Fromm is great, but Jake Fromm is not of the truly transcendent variety. I don't think, right? Like, because we've seen the truly transcendent variety. When you saw Peyton Manning, were you not aware that this guy is different from all the other quarterbacks you've seen? Because that to me, that's how I felt. Even if you go back into Georgia's own history, I have a number of friends who have covered the SEC for years who've told me the first time you laid eyes on Matthew Stafford and saw Matthew Stafford throw a football, you knew that guy was going to the NFL and he was going to be a starting quarterback and he's going to have a good career there and be there for years. You knew it when you saw him. Because what guy at the college level is throwing the ball on a rope like that? Right? Like Andrew Luck. You saw Andrew Luck and you knew. Like, it wasn't even up for debate. Andrew Luck was that great. And you knew it. I don't see that with Fromm. I see a really good quarterback, but not of the transcendent variety. So that being said, as a freshman, I'm not going to take a non-transcendent freshman over every other guy in this playoff. Right? Guys who have been groomed to be here at this point, or guys who have been battling their entire college career to get to this point. Guys who have been here multiple times. Baker Mayfield has been in the playoff multiple times. Jalen Hurts has been in the playoff multiple times. So, I mean, you look at these guys and you go, they deserve every bit of recognition that they get, and I'm not going to put Jake Fromm ahead of them. I feel like that would be awfully disrespectful to just what they're capable of and what it is that they do. You've been listening to Clutch with Keon Rose here on 92.7 FM, Nooga Radio, NoogaRadio.com. Remember, folks, it's not how you start, it's how you finish. Stay clutch, and I'll see you in 24 hours. Tomorrow we're going to talk about the coaches and the all-SEC picks that they've all made. Some names may surprise you. Some names may not. Clutch with Keon Rose on Nooga Radio, 92.7 FM.